Warm beams of early morning sun filtered through the large windows, kissing the rows of gleaming copper bowls and polished marble counters. The scent of rich cocoa filled the air as the day's first customers trickled into the shop, gazing in awe at the confections displayed like precious jewels. Edouard Beaumont, master chocolatier and owner of Maison Beaumont Chocolatieri, stepped out from behind a plush velvet curtain. Though he was accustomed to the murmurs of admiration, his focus lay on each small detail that contributed to his reputation for excellence. He adjusted the position of a chocolate truffle on one of the crystal trays, ensuring everything was flawless before the real rush of customers came. While Edouard worked with quiet determination, he spotted a figure at the threshold of his kitchen, someone who looked both nervous and excited. This was Liliane, the new apprentice he had agreed to take under his wing. She stood there like a hummingbird poised on the edge of choosing a flower, her eyes alight with unwavering enthusiasm. Liliane was younger, but not by an enormous margin, just enough for Edouard to sense her youthful optimism. She clutched a small notebook, the cover tucked neatly beneath her apron. From the moment she arrived nearly a week before, Edouard learned she was more than just an eager pupil. She had knowledge gleaned from countless hours poring over cookbooks and the soul of someone who found real beauty in the chocolate making craft. He greeted her with a kind smile, though one tempered by the understated reserve that all great artisans possess. She had asked for more advanced training, specifically to see how the finest pralines and ganaches were made. While Edouard was initially hesitant, he typically preferred to train apprentices from the ground up. He couldn't help admiring a passion that matched, if not exceeded, his own. Liliane was no stranger to the wonders of patisseries. Raised in a family that ran a modest bakery, she had grown to love the sizzling of sugar over a flame, the swirl of melted chocolate in a copper bowl, and the immense possibility in the turning of a whisk. What she lacked in formal training, she made up for in raw talent and an insatiable desire to learn. Edouard took note. He saw that she was prepared to churn out confections that would dazzle, and she expected a lot from herself. He held her gaze for a moment, acknowledging a meeting of two like minds, before wordlessly handing her a spatula. The lesson was about to begin. From the first demonstration, Liliane discovered that Edward's approach was exacting and purposeful. He explained the science behind tempering chocolate, how controlling temperature and agitation allowed cocoa butter to align into glossy crystals. Standing close by, Liliane intently watched him pour molten chocolate onto a smooth marble slab. Expertly, he spread and collected it until the temperature dropped to precisely the range needed for perfect shine and snap. Though he performed every motion with a calm, efficient grace, Liliane could sense a deeper purpose in each gesture, a devotion to craft that felt almost sacred. After demonstrating, Edouard handed her the tools and asked her to replicate the process. Every nerve in her body twitched with anxiety. She spread the chocolate with unsteady hands, taking care to angle the spatula correctly. Although she had done this before, Edouard's watchful presence roused a trembling excitement inside her. The chocolate on the marble seemed to take on a life of its own, swirling and thickening under the metamorphosis of temperature. He nodded with approval when the chocolate shone like polished obsidian under the overhead light, and Liliane's heart soared. In the following days, Liliane followed Edouard's guidance, trying to match each step to his rigorous standards. She was entranced by the subtle interplay of science and art, how the slightest miscalculation could spell disaster, or how the perfect whisk swirl could elevate a morsel from mere sweet treat to a sensory revelation. Observing his stillness and meticulousness, she saw that he was a man who sought meaning in every motion. Not surprisingly, Liliane realized that the moment she cracked the code to accomplish something flawlessly, Edouard would push her further, compelling her deeper into the art of flavor balancing, playing with textures, and eventually telling a story through chocolate itself. Their working relationship soon became a steady rhythm. They rose before dawn each day, started with a careful inventory, tested new flavor combinations, and finished with the detail work. Though they worked alongside each other for hours on end, talking mostly about chocolate processes, Liliane began noticing the little personal traits that made Edouard who he was. His eyes lit up when he recounted stories of how he'd discovered rare cocoa beans in remote regions, forging friendships with local farmers. She caught glimpses of a gentle soul behind the reserved exterior, especially when he shared stories of friendships formed in the heat and humidity of a distant rainforest, or the wonder of discovering a new spice that would yield limitless layering of tastes. Throughout her life, Liliane had felt a yearning to be inspired by a mentor, someone whose artistry lit a passionate curiosity in her. Edouard was that mentor. Despite his calm facade, she sensed both ambition and heart inside him, a surprising vulnerability that prompted her to wonder about his past. How had he come to invest so much of himself into chocolate, to treat it like a form of love or devotion? She never quite mustered the courage to ask him outright, but there would be moments during the lulls in business when an unspoken bond passed between them. Each swirl of a whisk, each shy smile shared above the steaming pots, hinted at something that could blossom beyond mere apprenticeship. One late afternoon, when the last rays of sun gilded the kitchen, Liliane worked on perfecting her hand-rolled truffles. She felt Edouard's presence just behind her, observing. He gently placed a hand on her elbow, correcting her angle as she shaped a delicate orb. His touch was warm, fleeting. She startled for a heartbeat, then realized the significance of this guidance, aware of the thrill that ran through her. She tried to keep her heart steady. Though she couldn't name the sensation at first, it sprouted a quiet sense of joy, laced with unspoken possibility. Even the finest artisan meets unexpected challenges. For Edouard, it came in the form of a request from one of his biggest clients, a request for an elaborate chocolate sculpture to commemorate a forthcoming royal wedding in the region. The commission was daunting, a grand piece meant to encapsulate both the regal tradition of the bride's family and the romantic flourish of the groom's. It needed to stand nearly 3 feet tall, maintain structural integrity, and enchant the eye in every visible angle. Normally, the scope of such a project would have excited Edouard, but Liliane saw hesitation in his gaze. Perhaps it was the deadline, set only a month away, or perhaps the piece required more than he could handle without help he fully trusted. In that instant, Liliane resolved to prove her readiness. Eager to contribute, she spent long hours discussing design possibilities with Edouard. They sat at a small corner of the shop's dining area after closing, ideas and sketches littered across the wooden table. Candlelight revealed the faint lines of fatigue around Edouard's eyes, but also how animated he became when the possibilities of the piece opened up. He traced outlines of dancing swans in dark chocolate, swirling ribbons of white chocolate shaped into wedding rings, and minuscule sugar flowers to crown the final design. As they compared sketch upon sketch, occasionally tucking away an idea only to revisit it, Liliane found herself marveling at how Edouard's mind worked in parallel layers. Technical skill blended seamlessly with artistic imagination. His quiet intensity drew Liliane irresistibly in. The project also allowed her a glimpse of Edouard's vulnerability. From time to time, he sighed and leaned back, pressing the bridge of his nose as though staving off a headache. She did not push him to share what weighed him down, but in return, he occasionally let slip a casual remark about missed family gatherings, or how the demands of perfection often left little room for personal joys. She wanted to tell him she understood, that she too had sacrificed much in her quest to become a chocolatier. Yet words didn't feel adequate. Instead, she would offer to rearrange the sketches or prepare fresh cups of cocoa, showing her support through gentle acts and a ready ear. As the design began to crystallize, Edouard led Liliane into more advanced techniques. He showed her the use of cocoa butter coloring, how to layer delicate brushstrokes of red, gold, and turquoise to achieve a regal finish. They practiced casting chocolate into molds intricately carved with Baroque patterns. If at times Liliane's enthusiasm caused her to rush. Edouard's steady hand remained there to guide her, offering wisdom. With each lesson, their dynamic shifted subtly. Rather than merely imparting knowledge, Edouard seemed to invite her into his world, encouraging her creativity and trusting her instincts. When she worked with the airbrush to dust a faint shimmer onto milk chocolate cherubs, he watched with quiet pride. Outside of the kitchen, the bond between them grew. Sometimes a light-hearted sweetness broke up the intense sessions. One weekend, after a particularly challenging day, Edouard had her join him on a short forest walk behind the shop. They wandered among tall trees and felt the carpet of fallen leaves underfoot, inhaling the crisp autumn air. Conversation ebbed and flowed, space given to comfortable silence. She confided in him about her dreams of one day leading her own tiny but exquisite chocolate shop. He shared memories of how he'd discovered his calling in the midst of heartbreak years before, and how the craft had healed him, giving him something constancy that life had otherwise denied. Their footsteps wove down narrow paths, occasionally brushing against each other's sleeves. Each accidental contact sparked the beginnings of a slow, delicious tension. Liliane found herself longing to know him better, to tear down the careful walls he had built. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows through the trees, her heart fluttered with the warmth of hope and something deeper that blossomed with every shared moment. Though unspoken, their growing closeness brought an undercurrent of uncertainty. After all, Liliane's mentor and the responsibility weighed on him. He inwardly questioned whether his feelings for her were appropriate or some passing fancy spurred by late nights in aromatic kitchens. As the royal wedding sculpture began to take form, a testament to love in chocolate, his own heart unraveled. Quiet confusions. He could no longer deny that Liliane's presence felt like more than just a student following her teacher. When he glimpsed her wide-maned wonder as she delicately affixed sugar roses to the sculpture's base, something inside him softened and yearned. Still, he tried to maintain a certain distance, burying himself in the demanding tasks. He would instruct Liliane on fine-tuning the structural supports of the sculpture, swiftly stepping back after guiding her hands. But she noticed how he sometimes paused mid-explanation, gaze lingering on her a moment longer than necessary. At first, she dismissed those looks as fatigue, but as the days passed, those fleeting moments became more frequent. In the swirl of cocoa and powdered sugar, an awareness took hold. Soon, their eyes met across the workroom, as though searching for reassurance that a sweet, fragile emotion was indeed waking in both of them. Instead of confrontation, they found enveloping warmth. Two beating hearts tethered by chocolate and the scent of softly melted sugar. The tension reached its zenith one evening as they put the final touches on the sculpture's base. A swirl of swirling ribbons in white chocolate needed one last finishing detail. Tired but satisfied, Liliane came up behind Edouard and gently laid a hand on his shoulder, offering to help with the delicate piping. He looked up at her, vulnerability visible in the line of his mouth. Their eyes locked. In that silent moment, the unspoken tether connecting them felt unbelievably strong and terrifying. The next day, the shop buzzed with anticipation. Word had gotten out about the enormous royal commission. Curious customers pressed against the front displays, hoping for a glimpse of the prized sculpture. Edouard and Liliane had cordoned off a section of the shop, unveiling only tantalizing glimpses in progress. With the deadline only days away, the two worked from sunrise until well past midnight. There was no room for mistakes. The slightest crack in a chocolate beam could topple the entire structure. On the final night before delivery, Edouard and Liliane remained in the dimly lit kitchen, carefully assembling the final components. Liliane's hair was pinned up securely, but stray strands had come loose, sticking to her forehead in the warm air. Edouard meticulously guided delicate sculptures into place, and Liliane secured them. During a short break, She brought him a small cup of thick, European-style hot chocolate, laced with a hint of cinnamon. He sipped, and despite the tension in the air, let out a small sigh of pleasure. She took a seat next to him, eyes drifting to the imposing chocolate structure standing on the central table. "It's almost unbelievable," she said softly, "what we've created together." "Indeed," Edouard replied, voice low. "You've done more than I could have imagined, Liliane." Silence settled, a calm anticipation of something more. Edouard's fingers brushed hers. She felt the spark. In that unguarded moment, time halted, and they leaned toward each other. Their foreheads nearly touched, but Edouard hesitated. Just as he began to speak, a soft clang from another part of the kitchen reminded them of the hour and the monumental task yet to be completed. They snapped back to the present. Edouard exhaled, pressing his lips together. He swallowed whatever words had been forming and rose to return to the structure, leaving Liliane uncertain but tingling with possibility. On the morning of the delivery, the entire staff, including Edouard and Liliane, worked with military-like precision to safely box and transport the sculpture to the royal venue. There, in a resplendent hall glowing with chandeliers, they painstakingly assembled the separated components. All around them, wedding planners rushed with flowers, seamstresses busied themselves with last-minute gown adjustments, and harried attendants oversaw the gilded decor. Edouard and Liliane worked quietly, trusting each other's every move. When the sculpture finally rose in its full glory, a swirl of dark milk and white chocolate ribbons crowned by golden cherubs and sugar flowers, a hush fell around it. The entire hall seemed enraptured by the sweeping, romantic creation. After the final inspection, the staff drifted away to let Edouard and Liliane admire their work. She stood next to him, weary yet exhilarated, glancing from the sculpture to his faint smile. In that moment, it felt as if a barrier slowly dissolved between them. Without fully realizing it, her hand slid into his, and he squeezed back. She felt the steady pulse against her palm. He turned to her, his features illuminated by the chandeliers, a softness in his eyes that could only mean one thing. They locked gazes in a moment that extended beyond the commotion around them. "Liliane," he began quietly, he faltered, searching for a way to name this feeling. "I haven't felt this way in a very long time." Her heart surged with an emotion that felt equal parts relief and joy. She squeezed his hand again, letting her eyes convey what words might fail to express. He cupped her cheek gently, the pad of his thumb warm against her skin. This time, no metallic clang or urgent call of duty interrupted. They shared a soft, lingering kiss in the hush of the grand hall. A sense of completeness blossomed through them both, tender yet assured. Back at the shop, the weeks following the successful wedding commission brought a new atmosphere. Though they kept their budding relationship modestly private from customers, the staff sensed something had shifted. Laughter often punctuated the serious work, and Edouard's normally measured demeanor revealed fleeting moments of playful teasing. Liliane glowed, more confident now as a chocolatier and more open-hearted as an individual. Their partnership found harmony both in the kitchen and outside of it. Where Edouard was methodical, Liliane was spontaneous. Before Edouard realized it, he had grown more willing to try those daring flavor infusions Liliane had championed. Crisp black pepper with raspberry coulis, a whisper of chili in a dark chocolate ganache. In turn, Liliane discovered the thrill of refining her technique to match the precision he demanded. Their new creations sold out quickly, customers clamoring for something fresh and exciting, blended with the depth of Maison Beaumont's lifelong commitment to quality. At times, they found themselves alone in the workshop after hours, shaping new confections in a soft golden light. They took turns stirring, tasting, feeding off each other's smiles, allowing lingering looks. Her hand steadied when he needed it, and he covered her delicate wrist with his warm palm whenever her doubt flickered. It was during one such evening that Edouard quietly confessed, "You've reminded me to find beauty in every moment, to keep dreaming. Lilian, her cheeks flushed with gratitude and a touch of shyness, expressed she felt the same, that his mastery had expanded her horizons while giving her a sense of belonging she'd never truly felt before. In time, the name master and apprentice seemed cumbersome and unrepresentative of who they were to each other. And gradually, their bond became a living testament to how chocolate, a humble yet profound medium, could unite heart, all of it. The tang of bitter cocoa, the careful chemistry of tempering, the intangible spark in an unspoken look converged into something that was both tangible and elusive. Love, born of a shared pursuit of sweetness and artistry. Then, in an unspoken vow over the swirl of cocoa ribbon, they embarked on a new journey, one layered with devotion, laughter, and chocolate scented dreams that promised to last well beyond the final taste.